think, no, I'm going to behave now. I'm just, I'm loyal to EFBB, and then I go and do the same again. And it went, in the end, they just wouldn't have me back after a few shows. So.
Welcome back to the Fantom Podcast. This is episode 23, and joining with me is my co-host, Jay-Z Bodybuilding.
Nice to be back. How's everybody doing?
All good, good. Happy New Year. And today we have a very special guest. We have a long-time competitor. I know most of you will know him from the bodybuilding UK scene, Mr. Neale Cranwell. Neale, welcome.
Hello guys.
Yeah, how you doing? All good?
I'm good.
Very good.
Year? Still going. I'm still going. So that's
you've been. I'm just trying to think. You've been competing a long time, haven't you, Neale? Probably 20 years plus.
Yeah, it's actually 27 years.
27 years.
Which, in itself, is a remarkable feat.
Is that like nearly every year, like year after year?
So I've actually never had one. Last year was the first year I ever had of competing. So I competed for 26 years straight. And, when you win one regional show, it takes you on to the British. That often takes you abroad. So probably on average about 3 shows per year for 26 years straight, without it, I don't know what all the fuss is about. These people moan about it.
So it's part of your life, and it's part of your, you probably just, you must enjoy doing it. Otherwise you wouldn't do it, would you?
Yeah. I mean, I actually only got into competing because I'd done what most people done, was decide they want to lift a bit of weight around because they got a bit of puppy fat. And if we lift, weights, will turn that fat into muscle, and it might attract the women. And that was kind of me at I suppose about 20 years old. And then once you get a bit of a physique and you achieve that, there was no motivation. I lost the desire, the drive to go to gym because that goal had been achieved. So I realised then I'm very goal driven. So competing for me was never to go on and win so many titles. It was just to get me more focused, each time I was in the gym, or each time I'm eating the boring sort of bland meals that we eat and stuff. It gave me more desire and focus to work towards.
So from when you first started training, Neale, how long did it take before you did your first comp?
So it took me 3 years from the first one to competing in what used to be called the BNBF, which is the Natural Federation.
Oh, it's still going. It's still going.
It's still going, is it? Yeah. So that was where it all started for me. And I think 3 years is a good enough. Was
you like a junior or a first timer, or
Yeah, I was too old to be a junior. I actually competed in my first competition in Australia, so I went traveling around the world, and I think one of the biggest worries that most people have when they first go on stage is that you're going to look like a plonker. You're not going to fit in. And I thought, well, if I do it in Australia, no one will see me. Yeah, so that's why I done it there.
And before competing, did you obviously, was you did you research about bodybuilding? Did you follow bodybuilding back then? So it must have been 90s, early 90s, late 90s, was it?
Yeah, I mean that was the era of learning by default. You trial and error with everything. There was a bit of generic write-ups in Flex magazine of a workout to do or a diet, and that was all the information you had. And so you just followed it, and then realised if it worked or not once you've just lost 3-4 months of your life. And then if it didn't work, you'd have to try some other approach that you might have read somewhere. There wasn't really, in this day and age, there's no reason why you can't get in amazing shape, whether that's to get on stage or just to be in good shape, because you ain't even got to prep the food anymore. It turns up on your doorstep.
Everything's too easy, isn't it? Did you have anyone at the gym where you trained to sort of ask questions, or did you follow anyone? Obviously, there's no social media. Did you look up to any certain bodybuilders?
Well, the area that I trained in, we had one good bodybuilder, and that was Eddie Abu, who was a British champion for a while, and he kind of had everyone in the southeast that was.
Eddie's sort of gone the opposite way now, isn't he? Looking at his Facebook, he's quite against bodybuilding now, isn't he?
Yeah, it's definitely gone. You're not even allowed to fizzy drink anymore, so. Yeah. I won't say, he's a completely different character. If someone from today's era, like, I don't know if you know him, Joseph, like from back in the day when Eddie was a monster.
Yeah, of course. I remember. Well, obviously, I've seen all the pictures and stuff. Me and Simon talk about it weekly. Just some of the stuff from mid 2000s, early 90s, late 90s, late 80s. But Eddie was a freak, especially coming out of the UK. Once the scene had been fairly dull for a couple of years, he was one of the pros who was competing over in America and did fairly well for a short period of time, anyway.
He did. No, he was he was like amazing to be around in just a typical local gym. And he was like huge fish in the pond. He had an entourage, you know. Every workout had an entourage of people like that went around with him, picking up the weights and stuff. But he was, he really was passionate about bodybuilding, and that was one of the big fortunate things is. Like this day, it's hard to see that passion in people who've been doing it.
And did you go to Eddie for advice at all?
Well, I trained in the gym. Actually, the funny thing is, I went and done a local competition where I had a bike accident, a motorbike accident that paralysed me from my neck down in about 2009, I think it was, after I'd been competing about 4 or 5 years in the natural shows. And I was in hospital for a long time and had to learn how to write again and walk again. And it was a really slow, long, like horrendous process. But, you know, to go from the point of being spoon-fed and being taken to the toilet and then, you know, for months on end, I'm just praying to God you'll be able to just scratch your own nose once or take yourself to the toilet or whatever. So, and that was probably like the worst thing that ever happened to me, because up until a point, I was like most people, driven to get the next bigger house or the nicer car or basically materialistic things that people work towards. And when you're in that position, you realise that none of that absolutely got any value, because all you want to do is just not be a cabbage. It's like my worst fear, you know. And to get through that and out the other side, fortunately, changed me completely as a person. Because I think before that I was quite selfish, like a lot of bodybuilders are, like very self-centered, selfish, hard to stay in a relationship because, you know, you're very single-minded. And I think after that it changed like a lot of my looks on things. But that was when I kind of crossed to the dark side, if you like, from doing natural competitions, because I was so like written off by this motorbike accident. I just couldn't heal. Years were going by and I couldn't turn. I had no strength, and I went to some doctors for some advice, and eventually they kind of advised me that this would be the best route to recover and advised me what to do. But and that's what made me change. And so that was when I kind of started re-competing again and connected with Eddie in the gym, because he kind of helped me. Like now I'd open a worms. I'm now like, it's not just you and nutrition against the world. It's like you and who's got the best cycle and willing to throw it on, you know. So, you know, like Eddie helped me kind of like with that whole aspect.
Can you remember your first cycle and what it was and how much you sort of gained?
I remember it. Yeah, no, I do remember really well, because it weren't typically for bodybuilding. It was for recovering from this, like being paralysed.
So you took it for like medicinal purposes, not for like performance.
It wasn't that. It was like, you know, so I was told to do, I think it was only like one shot of Deca a week, and then something like 4 IUs of growth hormone a day to help with the recovery process. Protein synthesis and the rest of it, which would help you like heal. And that was from some doctors in Harley Street that advised me. That's what I followed. And it worked so well, like so fast. Up until that point, I tried like, I don't know, super vitamins and minerals and things that are supposed to help like heal cartilage and bone, and just literally, you know, I was taking bundles of these really high-priced, high-dosed, apparently pharmaceutical grade supplements, and they didn't do a thing. And then once, you know, it's like I got to that point in life where this is like 3 years down the line of being paralyzed, and you're either going to sit in the corner depressed and that's the end of your life, you know, like, or I was like reaching for there must be a solution. There must be a way to beat this. Like, you know, if I wasn't in the UK and was in America, you could probably go to a doctor and they'd prescribe these things for you. So, you know, so I got that advice, and it changed me, like, in terms of my recovery. Yeah, like I healed like within months. Like I was back doing things I was only dreaming of doing, you know, for So it would, but it didn't. That didn't then make me feel like a greedy, like typical narcissistic bodybuilder thing. Right, fuck it, I'll have more. So that done, a little bit done something. Let's take loads. It was like now I realised I can get back to doing some sort of exercise and training, but can't go back to competing in the natural federation. So now I'm sort of stuck in. If I want to carry on competing, which I didn't want to stop, that means that kind of cross that line, and then then I just researched the best things for health.
How far did you get into your natural bodybuilding career?
So I've done 4 years of it, and then competed for the UK, and that the UK would select competitors that were like pretty good and take you off to do Muscle Mania and some of these American shows. Yeah. And for me, that was like, that was my Mr. Olympian. I was happy there. Like that would be where I would have stayed. But then, obviously with the crossing that line, I then just looked into what's the healthiest. I was very, very, very like health minded. And to be honest, probably if I wasn't, I wouldn't be able to have done it for 27 years. You know what I mean? Everyone would burnt themselves out by then or ruin their, their internal organs or whatever.
Okay, so you started competing. How long after you started your first cycle?
So I've done probably about 2 years after that. It was the very smallest little competition. It was called Mr. Titan. If you remember that.
Oh yes, Andy. Who used to run that? Guy called Andy. Andy from London, wasn't he? Yeah.
You say I'm the thesaurus, so.
Yeah, that's a good memory. I can't remember his name either, Andy. But he was like a thespian, like an actor. He was that type of character.
Yeah.
And so he. Did
they used to like dress up in the? They used to have costumes, didn't they?
Yeah, that's it.
And accessories and stuff like that.
Yeah, it was like more theatrical,
yeah.
And so I'd done this little pokey show. Really, it was just in Hackney, but like that to me was better than winning any of the bigger shows I've won since, because it was so emotional. I didn't think I'd ever get back on stage, for years, and then to get on that little stage, and I actually won as well when I'd done it. It was like, I don't know, it was just like a dream. So after doing that, then I was fucking so hooked because the buzz was huge.
That was about 98, wasn't it? It was 97, 98.
Yeah.
I remember reading an article of you in it when you won that.
Yeah, that's right.
Was it Muscle News or the Beef Magazine?
Yeah, so I had a little dodgy police outfit on in the routine.
YMCA.
A police stripper, yeah.
So you went on to so what kind of you did? Was it WABA? You've gone into WABA, and what federations did you compete into?
Yeah, so after that, to be honest, I've done every single federation so many times around, as you know, because you've been at some of them. But I went I tried them all, and then what I realised and what I advise people that I coach is different federations look for different physique types. And so NABA never fitted my physique type because I was more, I suppose, more slender or aesthetic as opposed to short and stocky. And so I would always get beaten by guys with massive bubble guts, but they were look like little walnuts. And I'd think, fucking, I've got tons of muscle on them. It's pretty, but then they'd get rewarded in.
So you're class 2, aren't you now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've done the EFBB, it was then, but the UK BFF, and I've done that for years, and I was forever getting banned and fined and thrown out of the federation. So because
he's like the lead priest of UK, isn't he?
Yeah, I'd get in shape, do like 1 or 2 of their shows, and think I'm still in really good shape, and I don't want to stop. And there's a NABA show or a WABA show or something to do. I might as well see where that goes because it's hard work getting to that point.
Exactly,
and that was everyone's argument, wasn't it? Like, why can't you do more than another, one federation? You just worked so hard.
I remember reading about someone who was slating you, saying, he's just a trophy hunter.
Yeah, it's Giles Thomas.
Was it Giles, is it?
Giles.
But I see your point. If you're in shape, I remember when I first started competing, you do as many shows as possible because you learn from every show, don't you? You've got to learn your body. Learn how to compete.
Yeah, exactly. And every competition is a different learning step. Like the same process never works the same twice. And unless you can see those patterns, it's hard to actually get a good finish at each of the show. You have to get to know what if your body does this or does that, it's a sign that it's going to need less or more of whatever. And you, unless you can't learn. So I would go and do a different federation and do fairly well. It would get seen on, social media or in the Beef magazine, and then Bill and Wanda would send me a fine through the post, and then I'd be fined and told, unless I pay this fine, I can't compete with them again. And so, that happened a couple of times, and I did go back and competed with them. And then I think, no, I'm going to behave now. I'm just, I'm loyal to the EFBB, and then I go and do the same again. And it went, and in the end, they just wouldn't have me back after a few shows. So, I stayed away from that, and I've done really well with WABA. To be fair, like WABA internationally was a really, really high standard, and that's really what I learned is up until that point, competing in the UK, like you feel like you've got a bit of a grasp on where you are in bodybuilding, if you like. And then it wasn't until I went abroad that I had my ass handed to me by like the level up that these international and European competitors get to, that I realised that like people they're not seeing the full picture, and it would make me come back and work a lot harder and try and get in better condition. But then I realised every time I went abroad, I came back a better bodybuilder because I was learning. And like you speak to different network and lots of different countries do things in different ways, and you rather than stay in your lane and stay in your box and be single-minded, I was always more willing to sort of try learning from other people, and so done all the different federations, and I would highly. What's that?
Go on, Neil. No, carry on. Sorry.
I was going to say, and I would highly recommend that, to anyone that's like competed a few times in the UK. I don't think it's so like single-minded. There's a much bigger like world of opportunity, and then like 27 years later, like some of the best cities and sort of breakaways, like long weekends and weeks away I've had is where I followed up, from being at a competition in this country or that country that I'd never have chose to do. So like it has brought some really good experiences on the back of competing.
I remember we went to Spain one year, didn't we, for the NAC, was it 2010? Yeah. That was a good show, really good standard.
And that was with Ricardo and
Rob Ronaldo, yeah.
And I think Paul Thompson as well.
Paul Thompson, yeah, that was a good. We had a good team, didn't we?
Had a good team, yeah. And I think that was so hot. Yeah, I think I won that heavyweight class. And then I fell off. I come off stage, fainted off stage in the ambulance. It was so hot, yeah.
Yeah. So when's the last time you competed, then, Neil?
I think so. It's PCA finals.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. So not last year.
You look fantastic, mate. When you came out, because I'd gone to the toilet and then I'd come back out, and I was with a few mates. I was like, "Oh, which class is this?" And they were like, "It's masters." I was like, "Fuck off." And you were on the stage because you compared to the rest of the lineup, you were you looked fresher, fuller, like a lot fuller. That was the main thing I noticed. Was obviously you could see that you were experienced with presentation and whatnot, but the look to the muscle was different. Which I'll ask you later on about your approach to prep, because obviously knowing now you've competed for 26 years consecutively, everyone now the talk is pushing up hard. You didn't really have that much time off, really, when compared to some other people. So I was going to ask, what was your approach to the off season?
So what I found, right, and there's a lot of people in the same boat, is I would have an off season and try and eat, consume more calories, still in the right food groups and not just eat a load of junk food, still train hard. And I'd get to a certain point, like on the scale, and then all of a sudden I'd just look like shit. I'd just go all of a sudden soft, like the physique would change. And it would be always at a cut-off point of weight. And I think, fuck's sake, and at that point, it's really hard to build muscle, because obviously your body's starting to slow down in terms of its metabolism and digestion. Your insulin sensitivity is obviously not working so well.
What weight was that? Would that cut-off point be for you?
So for me, in stone, that's like about 18.5 stone. If I got you when you're younger, think, I just want to be 16 stone. I just want to be 17 stone. Like, it just keeps fucking going up.
It creeps up.
And then I was like, well, I just want to be 90 stone. And I know that's so close to 20 that would be the next thing. But I'd get to 80.
What were you, 5'10" now, are you? 5'10"?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So
I think
what weight do you compete at then?
So I compete in kilos. I'm about 109, or just under one. I feel like for me, as long as I get under that 110, I'm sharp enough. It's a good gauge for me.
What's that in stone?
About 230 in pounds.
17 stone, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's like a nice spot for me to be in. And with the UK BFF, I had to make. I can get under that 100 kilo mark. Obviously, you flatten out completely to do that. So I always preferred the height classes because it left me to find the right weight, and I was like one of the taller in class 2, so it gave me a bit more of weight on stage as well. But yeah, so I've been fortunate enough to compete that long and see all the different ways of either improving. But to answer your question, Joseph, another reason I've done a lot of shows is I found that you've got a rebound period. Like people talk about post-show rebound, and like if you do it right, you can add half a stone, like roughly, of like lean version of you. So like if before I would get to 17.5 stone and I'd start to go soft, like condition wise. But if I'd done these compete and then rebound, I could half a stone heavier in that same lean condition, and it allowed me to sort of pump my weight up like year after year without. Because I hate being out of shape. I know some bodybuilders hate working to be in shape, but I've always kind of rather feel like you got to look good naked. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed about you. You are always in good shape. You are always like lean and vascular all year round, aren't you?
Yeah, so I mean, it's easier now. I've done it for so long, and you have that old man muscle where it just looks leaner. But
do you find like the older you get, you'd have to eat so much food to keep the weight?
No, yeah, you don't really.
You don't have to try as much.
You probably don't need to try so much. But I think that it's like I've always been one of them people, which is probably one of the reasons why I could compete so many years. I've always had to eat a lot of food. So when I diet, I go from a lot of food, someone's kind of start point of their diet, and so I'm never really hungry on a prep. It's just I get bored, like the same foods, but I never starve. Like my carbs on a prep would never drop less than 350 probably. So and that's it. Like it's easy. Like that for most people, that's sort of what they might eat generally, year round. So if I'm off season, then you probably times in that number by 2 or 3, So it's the prep thing's actually a bit of a relief because I haven't got to force as much food in all the time.
So how much different is prepped to off season for you? Is it just like more cardio or eating cleaner? How would you differentiate the 2 seasons?
So for me, like really now, it's almost identical. It's just so for 26 years, I've always done an hour of cardio fasted every morning. I've always done it regardless. Let's have the odd hangover. It don't happen then. But I mean, generally,
it becomes habit then, doesn't it? I mean, I do 40 minutes every morning.
Yeah, it's just habit.
Yeah.
And I use that first hour to do like tasks that, you can do off like an iPad or whatever. So it's productive as well. And it also sets my rest of my day in the right mindset. But up until recently, I always had big dogs, and so they always needed to go out. So it was just like you've got to take them. So I've always done that, and so that would always be the mainstay. And then I don't normally need to do any more cardio than that, even for a competition, unless I've got a bit behind because I wasn't as strict diet wise. But my diet would be the same foods. The only thing that really changes is I remove little sort of extras. So like the odd bit of fruit with your dinner or those things would just start. I'd just take them away and just eat a little bit more plain. But the actual foods are the same.
And how far out would you diet out for a show? How many weeks out would you start your prep?
So I've done a lot. I've done it in all different time spans. To be honest, I've done it in 8 weeks. I've done it in sort of 16 as the longest. To be honest, I prefer a longer prep because there's no pressure and it's just easy and you just complete the task each day. When I've done an 8 week prep, that was 2 hours of cardio a day. It was like fucking tiring. You're going at. And so it's a shorter time. Them 8 weeks were not fun, you know. And I was exhausted for most of it. So
a lot of fatigue there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think longer preps sort of look like better, for me.
What would you say your looking back over the years you competed, your favourite look or your best look? What show?
So probably when I look back at old photos, that time you mentioned in Spain where I won that world championship, like that, that look I liked because my skin and the rest of it looked so young and youthful, and like had it to me. Them photos, or them winning photos, you could see potential in them photos. Whereas like if I look at the photos now when I compete, it's like realistically once you get to this sort of age, it's just can you better your condition and like maintain the size of the muscle that you've got. And I think like to answer Joseph's question about when he saw me on stage last, I think if you're as master, what makes you a good competitive master is not looking old and tired. Pretty much what everyone looks like. Their skin's on a little bit, the elasticity isn't perhaps there, and their legs start to disappear a little bit. And if you don't look that way and you still look fresh and like you're in your 30s, you kind of stand out. You just look like the fresh man amongst all the old people. And so
you could have easily competed with one of the weight classes, I'd say.
Yeah, so that same year I'd done the Two Bros British Finals, and I'd done the heavyweight class because I don't think they didn't do a masters class, or the masters didn't do anything, or what, they didn't go anywhere. So I just done my weight class the same year, and I won it, and I went into the overall, but I didn't win the overall, which would have earned the pro card. But I was backstage with like I don't know, a dozen other competitors, and they were all like they were all being really nice, but they're like, I remember you from the days of the Active Channel. It was you, like years ago, it was you that got me started in this, and I was standing backstage with these guys about to compete, and I thought, fucking hell, I feel old. I feel old for these young kids. You know what I mean? I started them off, and here they are asking for a photo because I was that guy that inspired them to get going. And now they've reached the same level as me on, we're competing on stage. So, but it's nice to still get that. It's and I suppose now the difference is if you can win or beat these younger kids, it seems to be more of a win than perhaps when you were younger, because people kind of don't expect it, perhaps.
I suppose now you've got that combination, like sort of the size, the condition, and the maturity now, which obviously a lot of younger bodybuilders don't have yet. So you probably stand out on stage more. You like more sort of more defined. Because when you're younger, you haven't got that maturity yet, haven't you?
I think it's that thin skin that stands out. When you get older, you have that thin skin, and everything looks really detailed for it. And I remember when I was younger, I was like in this fucking quest for thin skin. I was like, I feel like a fucking seal. How do I get rid of
thick skin?
Yeah, like I had this thick skin. I could never get really hard, and like I can't look like Branch Warren. Like that was like my big quest. And I think some of that comes with diet, and some of it comes with age and muscle maturity. If you just repeating that endeavor.
Yeah, I think because you compete year in year after, I think the fat sort of stays often. It doesn't stay on when you got like fat that's been on there for years. It's hard to get off, isn't it? It's hard to get that real low body fat.
Yeah, no, it's actually really hard for me to get fat now. So even if I come off the diet and just be lazy, which I don't do very often, but I have gone through stages of it, and I'm like, how can I keep eating like it's not even sticking anywhere? It just as you're older though, the difference is your digestion's a lot more unhappy. Like when you're in your 20s, you could go to an all-you-can-eat pizza restaurant and like another day without an issue. Now, if I'd done that, I'd be like written off for probably a week with digestive issues.
Has your approach to training changed much over the years, Neale? Because I know you've had your fair share of injuries as well as obviously the incidents and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's had to change because of the injuries. So I looked to Dexter Jackson, a lot, where I was watching how he continued and actually still improved, and he had to come away from some of the more compound things. So I don't think there's anything sad in it. And I've got a good friend who's a competitor, and he's in his 50s actually, and his name's Roy McLean. I'm sure Simon.
Yeah, I know Roy. Yeah.
And he's had really terrible back and disc issues, and not being able to do any compounding sort of leg exercises for a long time. Really good progress. So you do have to change your tactics otherwise you're going to break. But I think like most bodybuilders or most of us kind of men, we feel like we're unbreakable until we break, and then even if we do break, we feel like, oh, that was just a once-off thing, it won't happen again. And then it takes
more gear.
And then you're like, actually, let's stop trying to break it after. So, but it did take away some of the fun of training. If I went and done, so I can go back and so 2 years after this bike accident that paralysed me, I actually broke my back doing strongman. I got into a little season of practicing strongman to give myself different training goals.
I remember that,
breaking my spine right at the bottom at the L1 and 2. And so I was back to that square one where you're fucking off the rails again. I was so medicated, I was fucking asleep half the time because of the pain. And then I slowly got myself back into training and back to do it all over again. But certain exercises that are fun exercises to do, ripping a deadlift off the floor or squatting, and them challenges that you just do, or now you not a problem. But I'm not listening to as I'm doing the exercise, I'm not thinking about driving through my thighs, loading up my glutes, all the things that you might be doing normally. I'm just thinking, is my back all right? Is my back all right? Can I feel my back twinge at any point? And I'm not thinking about the exercise I'm doing. I'm just thinking about the damage control option of it. But I'll still do it from time to time because it leaves your ego inflated that it's still possible. But what I realise is that I can't do them things week on week like I would have perhaps in the past, because it builds up, end up giving back issues, which then ruin the rest of the other things you do day to day with life.
What about you, Si? I've never asked you, how's your training changed over the years? So I see you train obviously every fucking week.
To be honest, it hasn't changed that much. To be honest, the only thing I don't really do now is deadlifts, because I think the older you get, I think it's not necessary. I know I did this deadlift last week, but I think there's more risk of injury than the reward, and you get back. I mean, I still started squatting again, but nothing crazy like before. I mean, just no need to train like that anymore. So just be sensible. I'm still doing compound movements, but the intensity's dropped and the other weight's dropped, and well, you get wiser, don't you, as you get older.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I think that, but if you haven't got that goal of a stage or something to showcase, why would you get under 6 plates a side week after week?
Yeah.
When you could get under 5 plates a side and be that much more comfortable and still feel like you had a workout. So that's why the competing thing sort of stayed so long with me, because I know that it's easy to just slip back that little bit. And we all know, unless you're progressively overloading in some way, you really change.
It was hard for me to sort of pull out that mentality of not competing, because obviously I competed for 26 years like you, Neale, but not every year. And so it was hard to sort of not, when you finish competing, to not have it when you don't have that goal. It's hard to train, isn't it? So I still approach my training like I was competing, like I was prepping, just so I'd have that motivation to train. Otherwise, if I didn't, I'd just fall off.
Thing is, because you've got a gym, you're still the guy, you're still the man, in that. Because I think with a lot of bodybuilders, you take away that side of you, the training, the size of you and stuff, Like you feel like, well, a lot of people lose their identity because that's why you're known. So, like in your case, it was probably a softer blow for you because you're still like the man everyone wants to talk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm comfortable being like obviously smaller and not being lean and stuff like that, and obviously it's trying to help out the younger guys that are getting into the sport. But it doesn't bother me not looking like contest shape all year round. You know what I mean? I'm sort of comfortable with that. I think once you get comfortable with yourself, that's half the battle. I mean, it's when you get bodybuilders in their 50s and 60s still chasing that stage look. It's not healthy, is it?
No, it is. Good. I mean, like I have said to myself, there's going to be a point where I think there's that point of no return. That when you see it, you've got to own it and just say, okay, I had a good run. That's a long time. Like if you start losing leg mass or size, or I don't know, something starts to wither, which can happen in older guys, and you can't find a way to reclaim it, then people only remember your last competition.
Unfortunately, yeah.
So so you're better off bowing out while you remember.
You're ahead.
Okay, rather than
27 years is no easy feat. That's like 3 careers in most competitive sports. So
it is, yeah. I said so. My sort of goal would be to compete in the over 50s, which is obviously so that's 3 years away from me now. And probably just do it the once, and then call that enough. That was always what I said to myself. I want to, not for the competing thing, but like how many blokes, like if you take out the bodybuilding life, like how many average men at the age 50 have even got any?
I know James Welling's making a comeback, and he's 50 this year. Year. He's been posting stuff. Yeah, he gets in shape quick, doesn't he, James?
He does. Yeah. I mean he stopped when he just got kind of broke the ice, really, and everyone that's a reason to stop, but he just broke the ice in that 212 and competed once or twice and looked really good.
He did, yeah. Well, he got third at the Grand Prix, didn't he? And he made a few top 5 appearances.
Yeah, no, he looked fantastic, and he's a lovely guy, James. Actually, James, I've in years gone, he prepped me one year for a show, and he used to live down my way in Essex, so.
I was going to ask you about prep. I mean, who else have you worked? I know you work with James. Who else have you worked with in the past, or do you work with anyone currently?
So it's like the big names I worked with is like, so I worked with Milos Sarcev.
Oh yeah, Milos.
Like I think like at probably 5 years or so back, it was like I worked with, I'd learned quite a lot that we, can only do so much in the same sport, and that kind of the only angle I felt like perhaps I could know was Milos's crazy drugs sort of protocols.
Insulin.
and that, and he alongside that, there's a lot of force feeding the food and stuff. And, if you're going to do something, then like do it properly. Don't half-ass it. Don't rip bits off the internet, and do it properly if you're going to give something a proper good go. So I signed up with him and worked with him for a year. And it was the hardest year, like, honest to God, it was so hard. There was so much food and so much insulin, and which makes you so...
How did you feel, like, taking all the extra food and insulin?
Just want to sleep. You just want to sleep, right? But then you're told, don't sleep on insulin because you might not ever wake up. So you're like, fucking, I'm so tired. I was so exhausted. And you train twice a day, and the whole idea is to obviously drive all these nutrients in, like as often as possible, and use all this food and insulin to recover as well. So you should be able to do it more. I was really burning out. Like some people, it obviously works wonders for. I know if you look at Samson, like he's worked with him, and it's probably the best fucking movie ever done because it was at the similar sort of level for a few years, and then working with Milos has catapulted him out of control. So I think for some people it works better than others. It depends on how you.
Yeah, you gotta have like the time and resources to like do all that. Like eat 6-7 meals a day, train twice a day, everything else.
Oh yeah, it's full on. I mean, it's full on.
Perfect scenario, isn't
it? It takes away kind of all the fun of why we got into it, because you can't just pick up a dumbbell and start training because you haven't done like the pre-workout plus the intra-carbs and all the everything. Like everything was a big old ordeal just to have a session. So it took some of that away. But listen, I mean, I tried it. He's amazing, like as a coach. And I've coached people for 27 years, but he's so enthusiastic, and his emails and when you communicate with him, he's so passionate about it still, and that's like infectious, and that really helps if you're kind of like looking for a bit of a boost.
Do you watch him now on Jay Cutler's podcast? Because he's on quite a few podcasts with Dennis James and Jay Cutler, isn't he?
I went through stages of watching everything with him. Yeah, I go through sort of spells.
He seems to be like even more involved now, doesn't he? Don't you think?
He does. Yeah, it's like he's found a niche, really.
Yeah.
And he's capitalising on it, and good for him. Like he's a lovely fellow. And after working with him for a year, I worked with John Meadows.
Oh yes.
Which like John is like, he couldn't be further different as a coach than Milos. He's almost a complete.
But Samson worked with John Meadows, didn't he? Was that right?
Yeah, he did before. Yeah.
Passed away, yeah.
And I mean, that was so sad that he passed away, and he was so health conscious. Like, his protocols and stuff working with John was so minuscule, and everything was based on health, and the foods were based on health, and the way workouts were and stuff. And so, yeah, very surprising that was. But
so was it like the complete opposite to what Milos was like?
Yeah, it was like it's like day and night, but yet.
And how did that reflect on your physique, Neale? I mean, look, working with Milos, how did your physique look compared to working with John?
I think with Milos, it was like I don't think I don't think one of the coaches was better than the other. I think if you wanted to go to a coach where you've got it's less intrusive and it's more basic plan, just eat like this, train like this, and it's pretty straightforward. Because some people get paralyzed by too much information. So if you're that guy, then the John Meadows plan worked really well. But if you feel like, well, I know all this, like it's not enough. I want to know the intricacies of everything. Milos was so much more.
Did you do a competition with Milos? Did he prep you for an actual comp, or was it just like off season?
Yeah, no, from off season into a competition.
Okay.
So
how did you do the show?
Well, actually, in the contest prep, the last 6 weeks, I took it over myself.
Okay.
So I've done a whole year with him off season, leading into a show, and I was forever saying to him, "I need to do more cardio. I'm not getting leaner. I always do more cardio." And he,
don't you?
I don't want you to do any more. I'm like, I need to do something. And we kept having this back and forth. And then I'm like 6 weeks out, I think, if I don't get on and do something.
So was you training twice a day on his protocol, was you?
Yeah.
So that's probably why then, isn't it?
So his process is, train and flex, so train and pose is just, it's the same as doing your cardio. Better for bodybuilding in his eyes than doing cardio. But, if you train hard twice a day and go through posing, that's so much more taxing. My recovery just wasn't good enough for it. I think you are hampered by your own, recovery. And so you can only do so much. So, so I tried both of them. They were like, for me, they were big, bucket list things to do, to work with both of them coaches. So that was great. And I learned bits of them. But like any diet will work if you stick to it, really. But
these things that you learned from John and Milos, you've obviously implemented into your own training and your own clients, I take it.
Yeah. So you pick up stuff that you feel like. I think the worst advice for anyone is to go and pick up little bits of information from here, there, and everywhere, and then jam it all together, and it comes out like a load of shite at the end. It don't work, does it? You have to try one approach. Solid.
It doesn't mesh. It's fucking that, and it's too much going on, and one thing contradicts another theory. And you see, I think that's the thing with a lot of people now is there's too many cooks in the kitchen.
They all think their way is the way, don't they?
Yeah, the only way.
Yeah, and I think with experience you can pick up the bits that work. So I learned a lot from like an old coach actually, and that was do you remember Nathan Harmon?
Yeah, he's back on the scene, isn't he?
Yeah, So Nathan Harmon,
what happened to him? He disappeared for a few years.
I don't know actually what happened to him. I have got no idea. We actually fell out, me and Nathan. But we became not friends. But I worked with him, and he and I'll always say he changed my metabolism. Like that guy, what he done with me, the way I ate food, he changed my metabolism. Like if I hadn't have ever worked with him, I'd still probably be eating 2,000 calories a day.
He's a big feeder, isn't he? Because he did that with Sean, didn't he?
And it worked. And like I used to get up an hour and a half early to make breakfast because it used to take me an hour to eat it. Like it was fucking long. But I was, like, if you're committed enough, like that's what you used to do back in the day. These days, like kids, they ain't got that willpower in them. They just want to get up and take a fucking shake, and that's still bodybuilding. It's not really, it's not the same. But like he learned. He taught me how to eat food to actually awaken my metabolism, which made the rest of competing thereafter so much easier. And I actually never got in amazing condition until I learned that you need to feed yourself into that. You can't just keep starving yourself because your muscle looks withered, right?
Yeah, I've made that mistake before, just over dieting and scared to eat carbs and looking too flat on stage, losing muscle. And the times that I've sort of looked better is when I've eaten more food, not dropped food to a certain level. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. Yeah. So I learned that off Nathan. But then what I also learned is if you do that much food, you've got to do 45 minutes of HIIT interval, hard ass training twice a day. And I would be like, can I just eat less food and not do all the cardio? Like that makes more sense to me. You do learn from it all, really.
How about now? Do you work with anyone now, Neale, for your?
No, so I've just started. Every now and then I run things by Kelvin. You know Kelvin.
Kelvin Hinde.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I'm not sure. So yeah, when we was in Wabba, was you with us when we went to? So me and Kelvin have competed together abroad and stuff.
Last time I saw Kelvin, he was at Nathan Diash's gym in this was back in I think July. He was just prepping for a pro show somewhere. I think he just gone to come back from Arlington or something. But I know he was trying to get the Olympic qualification, wasn't he?
Yeah, he really tried. He really fucking tried. I think he missed out on points. They were like joint on points and got beaten.
Didn't Kelvin work with Milos for a bit as well?
I'm not sure if he did actually. I mean, Kelvin is diabetic himself by birth. So, but I always a couple of times when I compete, I will go. I'll normally reach out to someone I trust that is kind of a friend as well. And Kelvin is Kelvin's like. I find that northern guys, because he's from up north, they're much more straight to the point. White is white, black is black, and there's no mincing around like down in the south. It can be.
Let's talk about your gym, Neale. You had a gym for a fair few years, didn't you? Krunch Gym. So obviously you used to prep out your own gym. And how did you find like running a gym and training and competing? Do you think it was a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I mean, you know yourself because you're in the same boat. At the start of it, it was like it seemed like the best fit. How can you do all that training, do all that cardio, and eat all these food, like all the food you want to, if you want to be a decent bodybuilder? Well, if you own a gym with a cafe, and you ain't got to eat cold food out of Tupperwares anymore, and
did you open that gym for like your training, sort of geared around your training?
Well, yeah, I think what you want. I know what I wanted in the gym at the time then, because that was going back like 20 years. So I had the gym for 15. I had two, one for 10 and one for 6. There was like sports centres and there was like spit and sawdust. There wasn't really something in between. That's kind of all you got. And so like in my head, it was like if you could build like a gym which was clean and tidy, but had all like decent bodybuilding equipment in, rather than it being spit and sawdust, like you're going to get herpes if you come out of that place. Like surely that's going to be a market for that.
Yeah.
Kind of the gym that I end up setting up. But I spent too much money on the first gym. I was just too excited about it. It's like a honeymoon. I probably spent about 700 grand on setting it up. which like I think is a lot of money, especially
a lot of money, and yeah, you never recoup that money back, do you?
It took. I had the gym for 10 years. It took about 10 years to make all the repayments go away. You know, so I had a gym for 10 years, and I loved owning the gym, and I earned a living from the gym. But all the profit I made back from it went into repaying this fucking 700 grand loan.
That's a big loan, that is.
So it is a big loan, yeah. But,
so what was the loan for, like refurbishment and like making the gym of the equipment and the whole thing?
Yeah, just like building out. It was a bottom of office block, so it was building. It was, you know, like there's costs that people don't think about. Like
exactly,
you're putting in the gym, the drainage weren't right, so you have to build to start under the floor, which is just waste drainage and stuff. It costs fucking thousands. No one even bats an eyelid about that sort of stuff. And so, yeah, it was just a very expensive endeavor. But at the time, you know, it was. I just got like a 3 years prison sentence, and so it was the best option for someone with a criminal record.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you miss having the gym, or would you ever go back to owning a gym? Would you prefer like being a free agent?
No. So yeah. So when I sold it, it was a big, like, prior to selling it, maybe where you're kind of getting near yourself, but there were days it just fucking drove me nuts. The people listening.
Today's one of them days for me.
There seem to be more and more of them days, right? As you own the gym, like,
yeah.
You know, people come in there because they don't want to go home to their missus and they just want to chew off for 2 hours and pretend they've been to the gym. You know, it's like that sort of thing. You're like, you know, I feel drained talking to some of these people. And like, you know, sometimes I'd see the camera, you know, I'd see on the CCTV who's coming in. I think, can't go out of my office till they leave because they just drain me, you know. And you hear lots and that, but it was the best, like, social club. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's a bit like a men's club, a working club. Obviously, I had women at mine as well. But, you know, you get to know everyone and it's great. But people are the hardest thing to manage. You know, like they're forever breaking stuff. And
I mean, why I say to people, I mean, you come to a gym, a member, they come like, say, 3 sessions a week, 4 sessions, they're there for an hour. We're there 12, 15 hours a day, and we have to hear the same shit every day from the different people.
Yeah,
it drains you.
It's hard, and it's hard to just have that little sparkle about the same conversation. But
people come to the gym like for a release, but to us it's our work area, isn't it? And I found it hard. I don't know how you found it hard to train in your work environment, how to sort of switch off, because people go to the gym, they switch off, but when you train your own gym, it is hard. Yeah, really.
What I'd done is I trained sort of 2 or 3 times at mine and 2 or 3 times at another gym nearby. So like where I was, where Krunch was, I was right near
go to Monster Gym. Yeah.
And Steve and Ange, they're the owners. They're good friends with me. They kind of helped me pick and choose and set up my gym, which is like really nice because, you know, they're a local business as well. And so like I'd often say to them, if you want to come down and get away, come and train here and vice versa. So it was just, you know, I needed to do it just to have that. Otherwise, someone is either talking to you or you're not training. You're picking up like shite between like the machines and just like it throws you out of what you do. But you know, I wouldn't take it back. It was like I loved it. You know, owning the gym, I loved it. It was like because I had such a passion for that anyway. And I think if you've got a passion for whatever you do in life, you're going to be successful because of your passion drives it. So yeah, I love doing it. But now to answer your question, now I don't do it. I would never go back to it again. Like the amount of time it sucks out of everyday life, it's you don't really realise till you have it given back to you. You know,
so you obviously, are you just doing your coaching full time now, Neale?
Yeah, so I still do some PT, but not a huge amount. I tend to just personal train my online clients that once a month included, like with their programming, rather than just do like online check-ins. I want them to come down and see me and we'll train. Because then like that visual check-in, that's, you know, it's like when anyone comes to your gym for you to look them over, Simon, like they're gonna not like veer too off the diet because they feel they know they've got this meeting. Plus, I can see that they're training hard enough and make sure they're getting to that level. So I still do that, and I do that full time. And I wish I'd have done it fucking long time ago. It's like, like I say to a lot of the people that I coach, which aren't all bodybuilders, like I've got a big array of bodybuilders and competitors, but I've got a lot of businessmen and CEOs, and obviously the scope of the dynamic of what they want to achieve is completely different. But with a businessman and with these people that are so thrown into work and money and they've let their health slide because of it, what they really want back is time, and no matter all the money in the world, you can't buy your health back, and you can't buy the time back. And that's what I realized when I'd left the gym is I've got so much more free time and less stress. But actually, it's a much better position to be in.
How do you find being on the other side of the prep? So if you've got someone who's doing a bodybuilding show, how do you find being the coach rather than the athlete?
To be honest, last year I didn't compete for the first time, and that was not because I decided I wanted a year off. I was actually into a prep. But I've got two young boys, got two little boys, and their mum passed away in the start of the year. So I was it's been long enough for me to deal with it and not blurt out crying. But so when I had the full responsibility, not just of the immediate responsibility of two boys, but now their whole growing up future, the way they look on life and how they turn out, is all on my shoulders. Whereas you kind of you've got half the pressure off you when someone else is with you, and obviously that was another reason why I made sure online coaching was successful, because I've got to do all the school runs. I've got to take them to all these clubs. I've got to do all this stuff. There's no one else. So how can you do that if you have a job like it? So it had to fit. And I've made it fit, and it's, and it's great. And I can do all these things now that I'd never have been able to do, because I was always, running the gym. So because last year that happened and I couldn't compete, I just prepped some of my competitors into shows and went to all the shows, and it was very close to doing it yourself. It was very rewarding, and it's definitely something I would continue doing even with when I stopped competing myself. But the best version of it for me is that I'm competing with my clients at the same show. So you're I like that little team effect. So I mentioned when we went to Spain, it was as a team. I like that. That's one side I think misses from the sport. It's such a solo endeavor, but if you can have some sort of team side of it still, I think that's great. So that's what I'm planning to do this year. I plan to do quite a few shows with some of the guys that I prep.
So what do you think about the whole bodybuilding industry sort of nowadays compared to what it was, say, 20 years ago? Sort of the transition into obviously more social media. Everything's sort of social media now, isn't it? So what do you think, it's better now or worse? What's your opinion?
I mean, everyone that's old is always going to kind of go back to the better in our day, all that, But
it was.
Yeah. So I think, I think the romance of the sport is now gone. The days of you're going to do this competition and you don't know who else is going until you turn up. That excitement of, oh, have you seen so-and-so's there, the whispering at the show, and now everyone knows what the other people are looking at and they're photoshopped along the way before they get there. It takes some of that away. So I enjoyed them days because it didn't matter how many fans or followers or whatever you got, you won on merit. You just won because you looked the best. And I think there has been signs when I've been at shows that because people have a bit of a name, it helps the federation a little bit because the name's associated to them, and some of that sometimes must have an influence. But at the same point, I don't think you can take. It will never go backwards, and I don't think it's negative. I actually think it's brought it so much more into the mainstream public eye. And if it wasn't for social media and how that's been forward, I wouldn't be earning any money. So, without that, I wouldn't have an online business. So, for me, now it's allows me, I've got clients as far as Australia. And so that's a huge reach on the world. which you would never have. Like, you know, when you own a gym, what have you got? A 20-minute radius of members, roughly? Like, people
Well,
only...
also, it has sort of opened more for gyms, gym owners. It has sort of allowed for more people training at the gym. I think memberships have definitely grown because of social media. You get more younger people training nowadays, joining gyms rather than 20 years ago, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, I train at a really lovely gym in Hemel Hempstead, which is where I live now, called Physique Gym. And it's an amazing gym, but it's like a youth club there now. I mean, the guys are serious about training, but they're all of that young age. And I've never seen a gym like it. It's a couples gym, like teenage type age couples train together. Whereas what did they used to do? Sit outside like a bus stop and smoke weed? I don't know. But it's like now it's fashionable to be in the gym, and I don't think it's a bad thing at all. It's great
not at all.
habits.
Joe, you got any more questions before we wrap this up? We're done an hour. Can you believe it?
It's flown by. No, just what time of the year roughly do you reckon you'll be competing? How far out of contest shape are you now, and have you got any specific shows in mind?
So yeah, I actually posted a photo of where I'm at like literally yesterday or so now, and I'm fairly I'm probably about 3 or 4 kilos off being on stage. I'm not that far. I've dieted. So I dieted about a stone off over the Christmas period because I knew that I wanted to get my head in the right direction rather than eat all the pies at Christmas. So I'm planning to do one in March. I think the PCA I like the PCA as a federation. The standard is good. And the stuff, the way they put the backstage and stuff on for the athletes and the stage itself is good. I think if you go through a lot of effort and to compete, and you're in the back end arse of a working man's club on a small I couldn't do that anymore. Obviously we've all done it at some point, as you've competed as long as I have. But I think the PCA have really leveled up the showcase of their stages and stuff, which makes you feel like it's more worth it, when you do that sort of thing. So that's where I'm aiming to do. But I plan to compete right through for 6 months. Just keep going till the wheels fall off.
Yeah, you have to give credit to the PCA for the stage production. I mean, I'm trying to look back at old photos when I competed with the EFBB, and it's there's no real sort of photos from back then. Nothing professional like they have now. Obviously, got was it Fivos, and all their photos look fantastic, don't they? Yeah,
his photos are amazing. He can make anyone look good. No, he does it, but yeah, I like his photos. They always make you look better than you are.
Yeah, so we'll keep an eye out. Neale would love to get you back on it. We've only sort of scratched the surface. I know you've done 27 years, but it's hard to cram that much into 1 hour. If it's okay with you, would love to get you back in a few months' time.
Yeah, it's back around the show, that first show time, and I can tell you where. When
are you coming back to train with Leroy again?
I can't wait to come back. And I'd recommend anyone out there, if you haven't gone up to Simon's gym to train, you should. But if you haven't been up to Simon's gym and trained with Leroy, you're fucking missing out. But you've got to remember the days of the Dorian Yates video, because he literally says all of the same terminology that he did then. So it's like you're having flashbacks whilst you're being murdered on the leg press.
How did it feel training with Leroy? I forgot to ask you. Was your legs sore the next few days?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They were. Yeah, they were. It was my calves the worst. I found in all the years, getting bombs in the calves is almost impossible. But honestly, I really, really, really enjoyed it. And I trained with Dorian twice, and I got more out of training with Leroy than Dorian, weirdly enough. But I just think it was the puns that he comes out with and the way he screams at you. It's just, you're in so much pain, but it's comical at the same time. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. But soon I'm coming back. Yeah, probably in the next within the next month. I'm going off to Dubai in a month's time. I'm attempting to try and come beforehand.
Oh, we go to Dubai for holiday or work?
So I've got some business for a weekend there, and then
Okay.
I'll take like a week's holiday either prior to it. You know,
Have you been to Dubai before?
I've not, no.
Oh, okay, I can recommend some good gyms there.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I've seen the Binos one.
Yeah, Binos Gym is like that's where everyone goes to. That's Binos Gym. You got Train SF. You got Oxygen Gym in Abu Dhabi, Olympia Gym. It's a bodybuilder's paradise there in Dubai. Yeah.
No, I'm gonna have. I'll enjoy it. I'm not sure. You know, if it's my style of life. You know that whole thing. But I definitely
it's worth visiting anyway, especially Binos Gym. It's one of them gyms where it's just you just have to visit. It's crazy.
Yeah. No. I'm really looking forward to it. So I'll be out there, and then if I don't come up to see you beforehand, it'll definitely be shortly after.
Okay, so how can people, listeners, get in touch with you if they want any online coaching or competition prep?
So the easiest direct way to get me would be to email me, which is info@nealecranwell.co.uk, because I'll get all of those. But you can Instagram, which is just Neale Cranwell, and leave me messages. With that, I get so many messages that they can get lost because if I don't look down and fast enough in the day, they're just lost. So sometimes they get missed. But yeah, that would be the best.
I'll put all your contact details and links in the description box. Yeah. So Neale, thanks very much again for coming on, and we hope to see you soon. And good luck.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Nice to meet you both, and I'll see you again soon.
Yep. Take care.
All right, take care. Thanks, guys.
Okay, so thanks for watching the Fantom Podcast, episode 23. Great guest, Neale Cranwell. I'll put all his links in the description in the box below. And if you've liked this video, don't forget to give it a like. And if you're new to the channel, give it a subscribe. I look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.